Anxiety doesn't just happen. It's engineered by the thoughts that you allow to run unchecked in your mind. Today, I'm unveiling the most successful blueprint to naturally cure anxiety and panic. I thought that I would be doomed to a life sentence of anxiety, but these techniques freed me from anxiety's life-sucking grip. And it all began with a terrifying panic attack that I had on an airplane. The very first time that I went to a therapist, it was right after this massive emotional tornado. I was very raw, confused, and desperate for answers. My therapist told me to be mindful of my thoughts and to journal them, but she didn't take the time to take it to the next level to draw the connection between the thoughts that I was thinking and the panic that I was experiencing. Her solution was to prescribe medication, but I didn't want that. So I started doing my own research, purely out of frustration. I had no idea that my thoughts were literally ruining my life. And that's when everything changed. I used to walk around severely anxious, worried and afraid of my own shadow. But after implementing these non-medicinal techniques, I have never felt more free. And if it can happen for me, I know that it can happen for you. But before we dive in, I want to thank an incredibly brave and loving listener who shared with me that they experience anxiety and panic attacks. This episode is especially personal today. Thank you so much for listening and for reminding me that anxiety is something that we all face in different ways. If you've had anxiety or panic attacks, please drop a comment below sharing your strategy for managing anxiety, or just let us know you're here. Let's really support one another on this journey. Most of us think that anxiety is hereditary, or that it comes from the claustrophobia of being in crowded rooms, tight spaces, or fearing the future. I hate to burst your bubble, but none of these are actually the root cause of what triggers anxiety. And until you find your real triggers, you will remain stuck, unhappy, and you will not have peace. I'm about to share the top 5 questions that you need to answer to discover the root causes of your feelings of anxiety and panic. And at the end of this episode, I'll give you my number 1 book recommendation that can help you cure, yes, cure, your anxiety naturally. Remember, you're in the driver's seat. Okay, question number 1. Take a moment. Let's go back in time. Can you recall a distressing event or experience from your early childhood that made you feel deeply uncomfortable, anxious, or afraid? Maybe it was a time when you felt unsafe or unsupported. You may have more than one event. If you're like me, you might have 10. But for today, I want you to think of the one that stands out in your mind. Do you have it? Okay, great. Now hold on to that experience as we move on to question 2. Okay, question number 2. How would your younger self tell the story of that event? How old were you? Imagine that you were 6 or 7 years old. How would your 7-year-old tell this story? What are the details that stand out? Who was involved? What happened exactly? What were the actions that took place? Replay this event as if Netflix or Hulu were doing a documentary about you. In a previous episode, Think You're Over It, Think Again, I told you a deeply personal story about me and my father. And because I told you that story, the exact way 4-year-old niece would have told it, I cried while telling you the story because I felt the worthless and heartbroken feelings all over again. But if adult niece were to tell you that exact same story, I would say it like this. Yeah, he was busy. Things happened. Life was lifing. I completely understand. Like, no, seriously, I love my dad. Me and my dad are good. See the difference? The way your inner child tells a story, this is where the power lies. And I can prove that to you. You think that your feelings of anxiety come from being in social situations or because of the pressure, the stress. It's not. You are completely unaware of all of the rules, guidelines, and booby traps that your inner child mind created following this event, just trying to feel safe and accepted. You didn't start analyzing when you became an adult. As a child, when you experienced a situation, in order to remain safe and in good standing with your family and your environment, as a defense mechanism, your inner child did 2 things. The first thing that you did was try to make sense of what was happening in your environment. For example, I get yelled at when I make a mistake, or I get hit sometimes and it hurts, or my mom disappears for days or months, or my father isn't around, or something is happening to me that makes me feel uncomfortable and afraid. The second thing that you did following this event was create a story in your mind about why that event happened to you. For example, maybe it happened to me because I'm unlovable. Maybe I'm not important or not good enough. I must be a disappointment. Maybe I deserve this. So after your child mind completed this exhaustive assessment, your inner child created a list of rules and guidelines to follow, like a user manual, for how to increase your potential for success in your environment. And the rules and guidelines in this manual, created by your sweet, innocent mind, are still in play without you even knowing it. So as an adult, when you recall your past trauma and experiences, you may remember them as unpleasant, difficult, or hurtful, but you don't really think about those experiences anymore, certainly not the way that you thought about them then. In fact, the sooner that you can forget about them, the sooner you can start living out your goals and dreams, right? But here's what's interesting. Just because you grow up and changed how you tell the story about this event, that original user manual that your inner child created all those years ago, that's right. It is absolutely still in play. And so, the very moment that you go out of bounds and start doing things that your original manual says that you shouldn't do, that's when you feel conflict. And that conflict is the root cause to why you have intense anxiety and panic. So your number one goal is to find that user manual and read what it says, because it's not all bad. And when you find it, rewrite it. Because remember, you are in the driver's seat, not your inner child. Which brings me to question number 3. When you think back to this deeply upsetting event, what physical sensations do you remember feeling all those years ago? For example, do you remember feeling terrified or helpless? Was your heart racing? Do you remember feeling faint or sweating or being jolted from shock? Did you feel sadness? Did you feel a knot in your stomach? Did you want to hide? Or did you have the urge to run away? Remembering how you felt is crucial because these feelings are linked to the anxiety that you are feeling today. Which brings me to question number 4. What thoughts were running through your mind during this event? This is how we find that buried user manual that's secretly ruining your life. Because these thoughts are the key to understanding how your subconscious belief system was shaped, and to discovering how this event is linked to the anxiety and panic that you experience today. For example, maybe you thought, I'm not safe, or I'm not good enough. These thoughts created by your younger self have been influencing your life ever since. Let me give you an example. So let's just say that as a child, I was inappropriately mishandled by several relatives. Today as an adult, it doesn't bother me at all when I talk about it, until I'm in a situation where I feel like I can't leave, or if I feel like I'm in an unsafe environment that I can't easily get out of, like in a plane. When I'm in those situations, my 4-year-old self starts reading me my inner manual, which reads, I have no problem sharing with you what's in my user manual. You put yourself in an unsafe situation. This environment is dangerous. Something bad is going to happen and you won't be able to get out of it. What my 4-year-old self wrote in my original user manual is that I'm not safe, I must protect myself, and I must always be on guard. So now as an adult, when you're in a crowded or chaotic environment, of course you would get anxiety because your original user manual says that these environments are unsafe. So your adult self shows up thinking, yeah, this is going to be great, while your inner child is subconsciously reading you your user manual, which reads, this environment is too unpredictable, it's too chaotic, and there is no way that you can be safe here. I mean, think about it from this perspective. This is the same part of you that used to be afraid of the dark, afraid to look under your bed, afraid of going in the basement. And that same irrational mind cannot figure out how to keep you safe in this crowded, chaotic environment. So once that conflict happened, your body starts to react. And that's when your adult self starts to notice that something's wrong. And that's when you experience intense anxiety and panic, because that same feeling reminds you of that old past event when you experienced it then. You see how that happens? It's connected. It may be very difficult to remember the thoughts that you were thinking as a child and how those thoughts impact you now as an adult. So to help you in this rediscovery process, I created a must-have, highly impactful resource with 15 different examples of traumatic events that you may have experienced. In this resource, I've included so many examples of some of the thoughts that may be subconsciously playing in your mind so that you can begin to challenge those irrational thoughts. Examples such as thoughts that may be subconsciously playing if you had parents that fought in your home. This is a resource that you need to help you maximize your success. Sit tight. I'll tell you how to access this resource after question number 5, which brings me to question number 5. As an adult looking back, can you see the connections between those past experiences and your current beliefs and behaviors? Maybe you avoid speaking up because of fear of being criticized, or you stay away from social settings because of fear of rejection. Connecting your past experience with your current beliefs and behaviors will show you patterns that will reveal the stories that you told yourself as a child, which are still impacting your view of the world today. Recognizing these connections is the first step in challenging and changing them, because you cannot change them if you don't know what they are. I promise you, by answering these 5 questions, you are going to uncover the real reasons behind your anxiety and panic attacks. And that's not something medication can fix. In the next episode, I'll dive deeper into how you can rewrite that old user manual your inner child created all those years ago so you can finally find peace and true happiness, because you deserve it. We'll do that by reviewing my number 1 book recommendation. The book is called Dare: The New Way to End Anxiety and Panic Attacks by Barry McDonough. This book has changed thousands of people's lives, curing anxiety and panic attacks naturally by introducing them to the exciting field of positive psychology. So today we focused on how your relationship with your past traumatic experiences can secretly ruin your life. I actually took a deeper dive into this topic in a recent video titled Think You're Over It, Think Again, and another video titled When You Are Your Own Worst Enemy. If you would like some great examples of the belief systems that might be playing subconsciously in your mind, I know that you'll love that video as well. As promised, at the very bottom of the description of this video, I included the instructions to access this life-changing resource that can be incredibly helpful to completely freeing you from that irrational user manual that your child mind created. And before I go, you know this is my favorite part. I love you, and God loves you, and God has a message for you today.